when it comes to TB. In terms of external assistance, the Global Fund is 2/3 of it, and USAID is most of the rest. And the rest of it, and the bulk of funding for TB, comes from domestic resource mobilization. So if we think we need more money for TB, basically you either have to be incredibly enthusiastic and supportive of the Global Fund replenishment, which I hope you all are, or you have to be finding more domestic resources. Now, in terms of domestic resources, there are a number of different sources. You can attract more private philanthropy. India has a very good example in Datasri here, who's been a very generous contributor to the Global Fund. Indonesia has other billionaires. We also can talk in terms of corporate partners, and indeed the Global Fund is working with Fullerton Health on mobile TB clinics. But there is the opportunity, and we have been talking about it with Mr. Panigoro, to, I think, leverage the capabilities and resources of Indonesia's corporate sector more effectively. There are also innovative finance mechanisms. Actually, debt-to-health mechanisms have been used in Indonesia, both on HIV/AIDS with Germany and on TB with Australia. And there is the potential to do quite a large transaction with Germany, a 50 million euro debt swap transaction with Germany focused on TB. Elsewhere, we are, for TB, also doing blended finance type transactions. We have one being developed at the moment with India, with the World Bank, which is about releasing several $100 million for work on TB. So these kind of structures can actually make a significant difference. But there is a but, and the but is a really important one, which is the Global Fund is actually not a sustainable source of finance. The Global Fund, the whole point of the Global Fund is to do itself out of a job, right? We want to end the epidemics of AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria, and therefore not need a Global Fund. Philanthropy, corporate partners, innovative transactions can all be helpful contributors. But actually, if we are going to beat TB and do so in a sustainable fashion, you actually have to have sustainable solutions around domestic taxation and public spending and domestic health insurance schemes that are resilient and inclusive to the entire population. Schemes that only pick up the kind of urban elite don't really work for diseases like TB because they miss the people who are most vulnerable. So the sustainable solution, I'm afraid to say, does sit with the public sector in the government. All these other parts are part of the journey, and they can contribute to getting there. But ultimately, you need a sustainable fiscal or national insurance system way of doing so. And underpinning that, people often get distracted by all the technical problems of introducing this or that tax or this or that health insurance scheme. Underpinning that, the fundamental challenge that we face across a lot of different countries is the political will going to be there, not just to sign up to the declarations on Wednesday, but to translate that into sustained commitment and actually putting the financial resources on the table. Because if it isn't there, we will not get to ending the TB epidemic.
Thank you. That is crystal clear. Now I would like to open the floor for question and answer. You can direct your questions to each of the panelists if you have one. And we can continue this dialogue. After that, after question and answer, I will invite each of the panelists to have a closing statement, a very short closing statement. So if anyone have questions for the panelists, please raise your hand, introduce yourself, and pose the questions. Anyone? Yes, one, please.
Thank you very much. Blessy Kumar, Global Coalition of TB Activists. So I've been thinking a lot about our whole response, and I think the Global TB report is really a wake-up call for all of us. And it's really showed very clearly how much more we need to do. And I know we need increased resources. I think all of us agree and push for it. But I would actually like to say it's also a time for stock taking. You know, to see how we have spent the resources so far. I think that's very important. And representing the affected community, I still feel like we struggle for a space at the table. And I see that, there's a lot of reluctance in sort of providing and ensuring that the community is, like Lucica said, empowered to take that space. It's not going to happen automatically because affected communities in TB are very different. So the response really has to be led by the people. Unless and until we see a human face every time we think about TB, our response is not going to be different. And I think the events today, the childhood TB meeting, the human rights meeting, and then the human rights workshop that happened, all have very clearly shown that, really the human face is missing in TB, and that's why we don't look at TB and think of a rights-based approach. So it's not a comment, it's not a question, it's more a comment to say that it's a good time for us to take stock of the investment that has been done so far. Could we have done something different to have ensured that better results happen? And I hope that the next TB report really will be something for us to smile about. Because right now I'm not smiling. Because it really shows that we've all failed. And I really hope the next TB report will give us something to at least have a small smile on our faces, that the unnecessary deaths we see every day on the ground can come down. So, for panelists there and for all of us in the room, I would really say let's stop, think, and take stock. Thank you.
Any more questions? I will take 3 and then I will refer to you to answer.
Good evening. It is on. I'm Tom LaSalve. I'm Senior Director for Global Health Impact. And thank you for this very exciting and informative panel presentation. And my comment and a question, and don't get nervous, Adrian, I'm not going to ask you a question. Builds on that comment about the face and the people in the TB epidemic. And it really is, as a PAC, we have many programs around the world that focus on HIV, TB. And I would like the panelists to think about the systemic and institutional challenges that we have in crossing disease states, crossing from HIV to TB to malaria to stunting, whatever the medical issue is. And it's really difficult in the systems to look at the person as a whole person. That if someone is HIV infected, we're told we work in HIV, and from a systemic level and a funding level and organizational level, we're challenged to work across the TB or malaria issues. So I wonder if the panel have any suggestions or ideas of how we break down these silos of activities and programming and funding that really keep organizations that are on the ground trying to work, certainly in Indonesia but around the world, across disease states. Because I think that is a big institutional and systemic challenge that we have to face and be realistic about. So I appreciate panelists thinking about that and addressing that.
Any more questions?
Hi, this is Bobby from CNS. I just wanted to, first of all, thank you so much for raising these very important key issues on the table. I just wanted to say that I've been involved with the different health issues, so some set of that, and there are champion work which has been done by certain groups, for example by the union, for instance, on tobacco control, on NCDs, on tuberculosis, and linking different facets of lung health, on poverty, and there's so many other groups also which have done a huge amount of work. But I want to see TB as the way we talk about TB diabetes, TB tobacco, TB HIV. That is the way we talk about it. That is how the other groups should also be talking about tuberculosis, and as a threat to reversing the progress which is being made in diabetes, in tobacco, in HIV, in poverty, in malnutrition. The food security guys should be here in the room, and same goes for other groups. We are progressing, but are we progressing fast enough to bring more and more partners? Is UHC, more attention to UHC, a threat, or is it an opportunity? Should we feel vulnerable about it, or should we feel optimistic about it? And I understand the concerns that we want TB on the agenda, but there is more concern also to bring other people on the board, and also about health system and so many other things which go into making sure that TB rates decline fast enough to end tuberculosis by 2030 or even faster. Thank you.
Thank you. One more?
Hi, I'm Kat Euler. I'm with Johnson & Johnson. And I was just wanted to build off of a presentation actually that we saw at the Innovation Summit yesterday on the TB Center of the Future. And I was curious what the panelists' thoughts were on how technology can play a role in that, whether it's in case finding or diagnostics or monitoring and adherence. I'm just curious your thoughts on how technology can help enable a change in tuberculosis moving forward.
I will give the floor back to you, panelists. If you have questions that you would like to answer from the 4 questions that we have, please just volunteer. Who wants to go
Or
first?
maybe we just go and everyone says
Yeah.
something related to this, one way or another.
Yeah.
You start, whatever. I mean, like, choose something. Or answer all of them, and then we can all...
I'm going to
very
take them
hard.
all. Now, to come back to the civil society engagement, my organization was established by civil society. There was no TB control in the Netherlands by the government. In 1903, we were established by civil society. Every single city had its TB club. And KNCV was the umbrella organization. I strongly believe in community involvement. But we also need government leadership, and those two need to work together. Back to HIV, it's a shame. I mean, we have been discussing a TB HIV integration for 20 years. KNCV and partners are organizing a side event Wednesday morning, very early morning. For me, it's cut and paste. Cut the silos, cut the competition for funds. The P stands for joint policy development. The A for joint advocacy. It's unbelievable, the examples I've seen of moving money between the two. S, joint service delivery. T, joint training, education. And where am I? The E is about evidence generation. Let's come together. I cannot believe that after so many years we are still discussing the need for integration of TB and HIV. It's a shame. And I think some other people would like to talk innovation. I think there's no, of course we have to, this is a time of change management. It's all change management, and what we, technical partners, should do, and supported by donors and governments, is really to design and develop the platforms to accept those changes. Now it's a new guideline for LTBI, for drugs and new drugs and regimens. In 6 months we will have other regimens, and we need to assist countries preparing for this. I'll give over to you.
Yeah, so I have a few points to make in addition to what Kitty very rightfully said. One is on the enthusiasm with which Blessy waits the new report. Blessy, please take a glass of wine and calm down your enthusiasm, because the next year report, 2019, will reflect the work of 2018. And we are already in September. So 9 months of 2018 passed away, so God bless us what figures will appear, but I agree, us as a TB community will be difficult to come next year with the same figures of around 6 million people detected and around 4 million people missing. How many years? In 2009, when I took my job moving from Copenhagen to Geneva, I did a slide, and that slide was speaking about 4 million people with TB missing. Can you believe that if we are 10 years later and we do the same, how can you show your face as a TB community or a TB fighter or a TB warrior to say, in spite of all our work, we are still there? So that's why I agree with Peter, who just came new in this space, and he's very straightforward. It's like, and what's happening? I mean, it's like, what's wrong with all of this? And how can we move? And that's why we need new voices there. So, but to have the data, because you see, the way in which WHO works is with these reports and so on, we need this data more rapidly to know what's going on. Because indeed, if there is a problem, let's try to correct it as it comes. So the systems for data need to be accurate and live, that we are able to analyze, and Indonesia has great capacity and great people to be able to push this forward. And I wanted to also say something on the Indonesia. You have a lot of technical capacity over there. You don't need more trainings. You are amazing people. You can come and train other people. Please come to Romania as well, because we are in the weeds. So you can just move your things forward in this area. On the one important thing is on the disintegration. I want to say something, because I heard Bobby speaking, we should be happy with the UHC and so on. I am far away from promoting a very vertical approach. But I learned, you say you bite the sand. I learned from pain that all this, oh my God, integration and UHC is going forward with some abstract things. And when you go to the concrete work, due to the way in which TB is constructed, we are left behind. I was in a country which was defining their health insurance scheme. I was there. And the minister and his team forgot to include TB there. It was not in the papers, and it was not bad will. It was simply forgotten to bring at the table the TB people. Can you believe? So the point that I want to make is it's extremely important, of course, to look at the integration of TB/HIV. It didn't happen for so many years, and I'm afraid it will not happen. But it's also how the TB programs and HIV programs are structured. In a country that I love very much, which is South Africa, the HIV program is how to say, under the supervision of the National AIDS Commission, NAC, and SANAC in this case. That reports directly to the Vice President of South Africa. Minister Motsoaledi is dealing with the TB program. He's a guest speaker to the National AIDS Commission. The TB program is always, as it was, somewhere there, and then you have the HIV program somewhere there. It's like you try to marry a horse with a rat. Okay? So it's a bit of a forced marriage, because one is very high, beautiful and elegant, and then you have this, desperate TB running in circles. Sorry, I actually love rats, and they are also very good to detect TB. So the point that I want to make is that we need to look at these things, because it will never happen, my friend. Global Fund is trying to fund the TB and HIV proposal together. Again, it's a forced marriage. The rat and the horse come together, they put a proposal together, then they get the money, they separate. This is not integration. But to make it integrate together, you need to have proper accountability, because it's like you give me and Kitty $200. And you say, me 200, her 200. We can do more with the 400. I will get $1.
Yeah. Okay, I take the 399s, but the point is that we are each accountable for our part. And we have, it's like, and then I don't want to give to her, because I am responsible for my piece. And if I report to the president and she reports to the minister, then it complicates very much the things.
There are countries in which, we speak about the gene expert machine, and Minister Nila, I don't know how it's in Indonesia, but it's good to look at it because it will come. We have a lot of gene expert machines and we have a lot of cartridges. They can be used for HIV and other diseases, but it has to be thought in a proper way, this system, because if they sit with the TB program and I give Kitty to use it, if it's broken, me as a TB program pay for it, then I have to replace it myself. So I become like, why am I giving it to Kitty? No way. And the same for her. So these these plans of integration work if they are bound into reality. But our conversations are very general. We are not speaking about the concrete things. And that's why there are all these great plans in New York and Geneva. And when you go at the country level, they don't work. So unless it is addressed step by step, and how you can facilitate these things, we can speak here for a lot of time.
A couple of points, probably three actually. So our family of companies in Southeast Asia adopted TB as a health issue of interest for our employees, which is quite surprising because our consumer business deals with beauty and deals with fashion and so on, and they adopted TB. And they did it because it was a relevant health issue for families, communities and employees living in places like Indonesia. In fact, they did this in Indonesia and in Vietnam particularly. And I think from an employer perspective, we need to get employers on board with tackling the relevant health issues for their employees, communities and families in the places that they work. So I think that's a big area of untapped need. The second is technology. We really wouldn't accept, I don't think, in many other sectors, the lack of information on what's really happening on the ground on a routine basis. So imagine if we didn't know what was happening with our bank accounts when we're traveling and going to ATMs. Sorry, Peter, that's your background. But really, we treat, 6 million people a year or so with TB. What are the outcomes? We have all the data, there's mountains of data, but what are the outcomes and how do we share best practices? And I think that's a huge opportunity for information technology, just low-hanging fruit that exists. It's about deploying it. Now, it leads to my third point, which is, when I met a TB survivor, I listened to her story. I met a young man in China, I listened to his story. 10 years of inaccurate diagnosis and going from originally something else to then you have TB and then you have drug-sensitive TB and actually now it's drug-resistant TB. 10 years to get the right treatment and be cured. And this young man was 26 years old at the age of 16. Let's modernize TB care. Let's modernize it. Let's put the person, to your point, let's put the person at the center and design the care pathway around that individual or family or community, because honestly, I probably don't deal on a daily basis with TB survivors, but I've met a lot of them. And this is not an unusual story in many, many countries. The person is lost in the system. And we need to say that's unacceptable. We need to help patients, communities, families, employees say this is unacceptable. Do not get modernized care. So that's just 3 points.
So my turn. And I would like, as a medical doctor with 26 years experience of work in one of the highest TB burden countries, as professional bureaucrat, give some clarification about surveillance system, monitoring and global report. Of course, we, WHO, take full responsibility for global reporting and trying to do our best, but we can't to provide report for the year which is still lasting until it's ended. So the report now for 2017 is very in-time report, and we hope that it will be helpful. The second thing, another thing is strengthening and developing national system of surveillance and monitoring, which was mentioned by Lucica. It should be done. It's essential part if we're taking care about strengthening our TB programs on country level. And this monthly monitoring is very effective thing for measuring progress, for identifying gaps, and for taking decisions as soon as possible. To the request about what should be done, what innovation we are expecting, the answer is also quite clear. People with MDR-TB should be treated up to 2 years with the dozens, with very toxic drugs. And that's why the treatment success is still so slow. And we have a lot of gaps and missing people and developing of the epidemics. So another point of view, if you ask me if what should be done, or what are the maybe 3 key messages that should be sent and what should be done first of all, it should be done at the highest level prioritization of TB targets, and the targets should be put as a short-term targets. We have targets up to 2030, but as we know, the political processes are going faster, and presidents and other officials have 5-year period of, and if the targets will be 5-year targets, it will be much more engaging and effective and inspiring to achieve these targets and to demonstrate the effectiveness. If it will be TB programs will be prioritized, the second point, maybe should be even the first point, is the national strategy and fight with stigma, because we are unsuccessful, because TB is really extremely stigmatized disease. Nobody wants to be associated with TB. Today I give some another sort of analysis. If we look again at the data, then from 6.4 million people notified, treatment success is 82%. It means about 5 million people. And if from these 5 million people, at least 20% will raise their voice and start doing some concrete steps, it will be 1 million army of people with much more stronger voice. But nobody wants to be associated with TB, only the bravest as Blesina and other activists. But they're trying to do their best, but it's not enough. They need support, a very strong support on the highest political level, and they need more people. Next thing is multi-sectoral engagement. It is essential because it's social depending disease and could not be combated and ended without engagement of the sector. There should be change in mindset and change the approach towards this. And the final thing is accountability of all stakeholders, of all the participants on national level, on global level. These are the essential conditions of the success, and I think that they are doable and it should be done. Thank you.
Thank you. 3 quick comments, because I, again, realize I'm between you and coffee. First, technology is key to 2 things. One is to making the care joined up and patient-centered. Second is to enabling much more rapid feedback on what works and what doesn't work. I think, and I'm building on others' points here, but I don't think people in the global health community quite appreciate how weird it looks to people from outside the global health community that you have to wait for 9 months to know whether anything worked. I mean, it's just bizarre. I ran an organization that did tens of thousands of transactions a day, moved hundreds of billions every day, worked in 70 countries, and by tomorrow lunchtime, I would have known how much money I made on Monday. Now that is slightly different from the feedback loop that we've got here, and I'm not suggesting that we would get there instantly, but we somehow or other, I think we need to set an expectation that the global health community should be working on quarterly data. It should be quarterly data the quarter after the quarter ends. And I think you would have a revolution in terms of the nimbleness of the way we respond, and it would be a massive forcing mechanism for getting data through the system. Second quick comment. There is sometimes, I think, a false dichotomy between the drive towards UHC and between disease-specific initiatives like striving to end TB. Lucica talked a bit about why that doesn't work as a dichotomy, but I also think it's empirically not sound. If you look at the history of Japan, for example, post-war Japan, what Japan did in 1951, it launched a massive effort against the biggest killer in Japan, which was TB. And the infrastructure and capabilities that were put in place to eliminate TB were the platform